Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. So, welcome to my Suicide Squad review. Before we get into this, I just want to say I'm not going to be talking about really any of the gameplay or traversal things with this. Like combat, I'm going to kind of touch on because it has to do with the boss fights and stuff like that. But I'm really going to be trying to stick with the story, and we're going to talk a little bit about my background with the series as a whole with Arkham. But mostly, I want to talk about the response that this game has gotten online because it's been pretty negative. Actually, it's been very negative, to be honest with you. I want to start off with, obviously there's no hate to Rocksteady or any of the developers. Hope they're all doing well. I hope they continue to make games, great games. Because by the way, I still think that the Suicide Squad is a very good game. Even though there's a lot of people who would disagree with that. The way that they bring characters from DC into games and just how they create their worlds is literally top notch. And you know they pioneers of the free flow system. You gotta remember they started this back in 2009, right? There was no other competition for really these superhero games, and nowadays there's companies coming out with these other games that are still getting compared to these Arkham games. I mean, look what happened with Gotham Knights, right? This game came out. It's from a very similar studio. Obviously, that was WB Montreal, and it was compared to Arkham Knight like left and right. You know what I mean? It was or like two sides of the same coin, right? And they were like, it's crazy that Arkham Knight is still able to keep up with some of these games almost a decade later. But we'll talk about that in a bit. So yeah, I just want to say, obviously, no hate to anybody at Rocksteady. Don't take any of my word. I'm not a game reviewer. Okay, I'm not the guy you should really be listening to when it comes to if not you should be buying or considering to buying a game. I'm just going to give you my 2 cents on the story and what I personally thought. But first, I kind of want to give a little bit of background on my experience with the Arkham series because I'm a Minecraft YouTuber. I make a lot of Minecraft content, so why should I have an opinion about the Arkham series? I first played the Arkham series a few years after it came out. I'm not sure exactly what year it was. I remember I was up at a cottage, and my dad was showing up a few days late, and he showed up. We had an Xbox 360 up at the cottage at the time. And he came up with two games, that being Arkham Asylum and Injustice, both top-notch games. And I love both of them. The next one I played after that was Origins. Being a kid, I didn't know what the continuity was or anything. I didn't really pay attention to it. I didn't really fall in love with it as much because, again, I was really young, right? This first game came out in 2009. I'm born in 2004, so I was really, really young. By the time I really got around to knowing what the game was, it was probably the time I played City, which was the third one I actually played. Obviously, Origins is a prequel, so it really didn't matter. And I still didn't know the continuity of the whole series as a whole, but I still liked it. I thought it was cool. I liked the combat system. I had to play in easy mode because I kept dying, and I was trash at the Solomon Grundy fight. I remember being in the basement of my house playing the Solomon Grundy fight, and I died about 200 times. And I remember throwing my controller down and saying, "Fuck this game, dude. This sucks," and I walked out because I didn't know how to do the automatic spray thing. And nowadays I can complete it in about 90 seconds. So goes to show where I've come from. But I would say the first game I really fell in love with this series with was definitely Arkham Knight. It was on Xbox One. I first played it on, and when I first played the game, I don't know how old I was. I can't think off the top of my head, but I have a playthrough series on Slater's channel. I played I think it was like the first hour and a half of the game. I'll put some clips up here, and you can see my reaction to Joker coming back, which goes to show just how much I was really getting into this game, in my opinion.
What? Yeah, that blast rate is increased by 1,000%.
What? Why? Oh. Oh, it's affecting me. Oh no. What?
Miss me?
What? No.
So yeah, I've been a fan of these games for a long time. And since then, I've played them almost religiously to the point where it is almost a yearly occurrence that I go through these games. It's a problem, to be honest with you. But I love these games to death. They're some of my favorite games of all time. When they announced Suicide Squad, I was excited, to be honest with you. I was very, very excited. And that's kind of what this video is about. I'm going to kind of be talking about what it means to tie into those previous games and what I personally think. But first, let's talk about the online response. People are angry. Some people are angry. Some people are okay with it. Some people are kind of in the middle, and that's kind of where I sit, to be honest with you. But people's biggest complaint seems to be with the Justice League. Obviously, introducing a Justice League in the Arkham universe has been something people have been wondering about since Arkham City, and it's something people have looked forward to. There's been teases to a Superman and Flash in Arkham Knight. There was voice lines, and there was the posters on the walls and shit. So when they finally get introduced, and it's just to introduce them just to kill them off, people are angry. That is something people are not okay with. There's also a lot of complaints about the gameplay. With the combat system, the missions not being very replayable, and now they're all kind of the same. The fact that it's not a single-player game is a thing that a lot of people are not happy with either. I heard a lot of people saying that they would have rathered a single-player title, more like the Arkham games, and not the multiplayer experience. I personally thought the multiplayer experience was like the one saving grace of this thing. I only played it with me and Slater, so I bet if I played it with a full crew, it probably would have enhanced my experience a lot more, but I only played it with two. But the biggest one that people are really pointing out online is the fact that it's a live service title, which means that there'll be new content. Obviously, there's a battle pass, there's cosmetics and microtransactions and all that stuff. But there's new content, and that will affect the main story, which is probably one of my biggest problems with the game. The fact that this story isn't over, and the fact that I finished the game, but I really didn't feel like I have finished the game yet. And I understand all that stuff is going to be free, to my understanding, but I feel like I can't really review this story, and that is really my biggest problem with this game. I don't feel like this story is over. However, moving on from all that, obviously there's a lot of legitimate complaints a lot of people have with the games, especially with the combat and how the game is kind of built. I mean, obviously it's a looter shooter, so people are going to have problems with it anyway. I think it's kind of an Arkham Knight Batmobile situation where the combat necessarily isn't bad, but it's just there's too much of the same thing. So people don't like it. I personally love the Arkham Knight Batmobile. I think it's one of the coolest parts of that game. Makes me feel like I'm just like in a tank battle warfare. That's a bad way of putting it. But anyway, I've always liked that kind of combat, and I did enjoy this combat, but it does get old after a while, to be honest with you. However, let me get on to my actual thoughts on what I thought about the story, because some of it is some legitimate criticisms, and then some of the stuff is just kind of like minor nitpicks that I think they probably could have done better. Let me give some of the good things first, because some of this stuff is actually done really well in this game, and then some of this stuff is like, could be better. First of all, I want to say that the concept of this game is super cool on paper. The fact that like the good guys are now the bad guys, and the entire city has been wiped out, and now you're playing as this ragtag group of criminals who have to go in and try and kill the Justice League, which is like an impossible task. And you're like, how the hell are we supposed to do this? And you end up doing it with the help of like Lex Luthor and alternate Lex Luthor or whatever. And I will say the tone and just the fact that it shows the capabilities of these heroes if they were to turn evil, they absolutely nailed the characterization of all these guys. Even when they are mind controlled, it was really good. I think all the voice cast fucking nailed it in this game, if I had to say it. I don't think there was one single person who was voicing this character who I went, yeah, that's not Superman, or yeah, that's not Flash. They all sounded like they fit the character, which I've had complaints about in the past. However, I think some of my problems have to do with some of the boss fights. I think they kind of left some to be desired. It's kind of just the same things over and over again with some added difficulties. And really, when you compare it to a lot of the normal fights with like goons, it's really not that different. Like, you're just using counter shots and you're flying around, you're dodging their super moves, and you're trying to figure out how to heal. For pretty much that's pretty much each boss fight. Now, most of that has to do with the combat. I mean, a lot of it has to do, a lot of my complaints with the game have to do with the combat, which, you know, it could be better, it could be worse. I like the combat mostly. But if I had to pick out a lot of what I had my problems with, the outstanding thing is definitely the combat, and the boss fights being kind of bad are a part of that. Once again, I think my biggest problem with this game just has to do with that the story's not over, right? I don't think I can really judge this game until I've seen the whole game. Moving on to the multiverse stuff, I thought it was just a little shoot in, to be honest. I didn't think it was really necessary. You could pretty much remove it, and it would be that's pretty much the same game, to be honest with you. It has no real over effect in the story, and I feel like they just did it so they could bring in other versions of characters, and they didn't have to like follow the rules of the Arkham universe, which like it's a cool idea, like, and I get it. But I feel like the reason that, okay, I'm going to be honest. I think the reason they did it is because they saw Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield come through a portal, and they were like, hey, that's cool. Everyone's doing multiverse stuff. Let's do that. The fact that we killed a Earth 2 Brainiac and not our own was a little weird too. Like, I feel, again, like the story's not over, right? The main conflict, which is our version of Brainiac, is not dead. So why is the story not over yet? The titular villain isn't dead. It'd be like an Arkham Knight if you took out the Arkham Knight. You bring Jason to justice and he goes off and does his little thing after the Mole Man boss fight and like he reveals himself, and then you just didn't go after Scarecrow and like he continues to taunt you over the TV screens. It would just be really weird. Or like in Arkham City, like if you took down Hugo Strange and shut down Protocol 10 and then just didn't go after Joker and Talia, and it's like the titular villain is still not gone. Like what? Like there's still so much left of the story, and you're just not doing it so you can keep people around for the DLC content. And again, I'm fine with that as long as some of the other stuff that happens in the story gets undone. I think a lot of the problems people have with the story, especially to do with Batman and the Justice League, can be undone, especially with some of the evidence that's been coming out of them being like clones or whatever, which I'm not really going to talk about in this, by the way. I want to make that very clear. I'm probably just going to talk about what happened in the game because it's all theories right now until it actually happens in the DLC content. So I'm not going to talk about that. But the big one that a lot of people have a problem with, and the big thing that I want to talk about, is Batman. Obviously, when it comes to the Arkham games, you're going to have a conversation about Arkham Batman, especially because we know he's a villain in this game. Spoiler alert, he dies in this game. He kind of felt like the end game villain, in my opinion. You meet him at the beginning, and you have that, like, reverse Arkham Predator mission, which was super cool, by the way. The fact that you're going through this area, and you're trying to escape, and he's taking you out one by one. I loved that. I thought that was super cool. The fact that there's all of his gadgets around, and you could like see him crawling through vents and shit. I thought that was awesome. So all that really worked. And the fact that he's like sitting up on buildings watching you, and he would like smoke bomb away, all really cool stuff. If you're gonna make Batman a villain, that's how you do it, in my opinion. Kevin Conroy knocked it out of the park. I thought he absolutely nailed this role. If it's one of his last performances, I know he's gonna be in Crisis on Infinite Earths or one of these DC movies, and he did some recording for that. I know this isn't his last performance from some of the leaks that came out, but if this is one of his last performances, he absolutely did a great job. And whatever people think about how his story kind of ended with this version of Batman, he's still the GOAT, bro. He's the best version of Batman. Every time he kind of came on screen, I was like, that is super cool. He always had something really dark and demonic. And I was like, dude, this guy's actually terrifying me, bro. Like, the Demon Bat boss fight I thought was cool. The actual fight where you're like shooting him in the shadow realm or whatever, the fear realm, was a little lame, but hey, some of that has to do with the combat. I'm going to assume that part wasn't the highlight of those boss fights, and that the fear element of it all, like the area, like the Predator mission, and then the other one where you're like activating the fear toxin, I'm going to assume that was their highlight, and that was the thing they were focusing on, and not the actual fight, because it just didn't seem like that was finished. Like, it was too damn easy. Like, he just kind of stood there for most of it. And then he would like throw the beams at you, and then the little waves, and that was kind of it. I wish there was kind of more. I feel like they could have done more of like a Poison Ivy style boss fight. Once again, I thought his characterization was great in this game, and the fact that they kind of tied in a lot of the stuff from Arkham Knight, I thought was really cool. The fact that they did the contingency plans, I thought was awesome. We always questioned if like Arkham Batman would make contingency plans against the Justice League, and we got that answer. Like, clearly he made them. The fact that he maybe killed Robin, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, yeah, that's kind of sad, and like, you know, Arkham Robin kind of got done dirty, but like, I mean, it kind of makes sense though. Like, if Robin tried to come after them and like Suicide Squad's the only guys left, it kind of makes sense that like he had to have lost, right? When it comes to Arkham Batman, I mean, his story did kind of end in Arkham Knight, so the plot armor was lifted, right? And that's kind of the big one. At the same time, we're not really sure if he is dead, right? There's a lot of evidence that's been coming out where we're not really sure if it was them or not. And maybe it was clones, maybe it's alternate dimension versions of them. I don't know. But if he is dead, I mean, I'm okay with it. I'm content with it at the end of the day. I think, yeah, it's a little weird for him to go out that way, and especially for Rocksteady to kind of send him out in a weird way as bait for Superman. It doesn't seem like the Rocksteady thing to do, and that's why I truly do think that there's something else going on here. But hey, at the end of the day, if that's the way he goes, that's the way he goes. I'm not sure. Even if he does come back, I'm not sure how much of Kevin Conroy will hear. I don't know how much he recorded for the rest of season 1 or the rest of the DLC packs. I'm not sure how much of that is done. So we'll see. That's kind of like a wait and see thing. If they do keep Arkham Batman alive, I mean, there's always the option of recasting. Bringing back Roger Craig Smith would be a welcome thing for me. I know nobody can replace Kevin Conroy, and that is like he's the GOAT, right? There's no one who can replace him as Batman. But if you had to, for the sake of telling a story with him in a future Arkham game or a Damian Wayne or a Batman Beyond game, which would be absolutely sick, by the way. Can we please get a Terry McGinnis? I'd be okay with it, is what I'm saying. I would be okay with it if there's a story to tell and you need to recast this version of Batman. I'm okay with it. To kind of wrap up these thoughts, I'll just say that I think in whatever way it continues with the DLC content, I'm kind of okay with it being over for the Arkham storyline. I hope it's not at the end of the day. I hope there is still more to tell, but I mean, we'll just kind of have to wait and see, right? As I said earlier, the story's not over, so it's really not for us to say if Arkham Batman is dead or not, if the Justice League is actually dead. We killed him, but was it the actual Justice League, right? That's kind of what we don't know yet. So moving on to Brainiac's boss fight, I think this is probably one of the big last things that I wanted to talk about, which, by the way, this boss fight was absolutely shit. Anything to do with the other, like, all the other boss fights, at least they were unique. With Brainiac, he just was the Flash, but more complicated. Okay, and that's the best way I could put it. Here's the best representation of how I felt with this game. We finished. So me and Slater played through the entire game, right? We played through the entire game together, the entire storyline. We beat Superman, and we were on a pretty good run. We played it almost every day or every other day. We got to Superman. We beat Superman, and then we took like 4 days off from playing this game. And like we would still talk about like where the story was going to go. Like, oh, like what do you think? How's this Brainiac boss fight going to be? Like, oh yeah, we should probably play that and finish it off. But the game felt like it was over after we beat Superman. After we killed the Justice League, the game was over. So I was like, why is this still going on? And then we get to the Brainiac boss fight, which was a whole thing on its own, and it was just the Flash, but with like laser beams and enemies and poison ivy plants and vehicles and shit. When he turned into the Flash, I was like, oh, that's cool. He's going to like use their abilities. That's a neat idea. Oh, it's going to be like combining all of their boss fights into one. I'm like, that's cool. But then he just kind of stayed as the Flash, and I was like, okay, when's he going to turn into Lantern? And then we kind of killed him, and I was like, oh, okay, so he was just Flash, but harder. Okay, well, I mean, obviously I know that there's other Brainiac boss fights coming in the DLC content, but once again, I don't feel the need to fight the same guy 13 times. The fact that it wasn't our Brainiac also kind of ruined it for me. Like, it felt like we weren't attacking the root problem. We were attacking a part of it. And then they all kind of celebrated and was like, well, the fight continues, but we win, team. We killed the Justice League. We killed Brainiac. GG's. Story complete. A lot of my root problems with it really just come back to the fact that it's not over. The game is not over. It's a live service title. I know there's still plenty of new content to come in, and I'm going to play all of it. It's like I'm going to play all of the DLC packs. I'm going to play the new characters. I'm probably going to play Joker. I'm probably going to love Joker, and that's going to be all fine and dandy, but I think they should have focused more on having the main story be a complete point A, point B, and full arc, and have it end, and then you go to the other dimensions and you do these side missions. Kind of think Arkham episodes with their own stories that are separate from Brainiac and the rest of the Justice League. If we had killed our version of Brainiac, it would have felt a little bit more narratively, it would have worked more, in my opinion. To kind of wrap up my thoughts, once again, do not take any of this stuff to heart. If you want to play the game, go try the game for yourself if you can afford it. It's a good game. Despite everything I've said in this video, it is a good game. I'm comparing it to some of the best superhero games. My biggest problem with it is not what it is, it's what it could have been. And that's the best way I can put it. This could have been a player experience with a very unique story without all the live service stuff and microtransactions and all that other stuff that a lot of people seem to hate. This could have been a well thought out narrative with all of this mayhem and apocalypse shit that's going on with the Justice League. But we got the game that we got, and I think the story is good for what it is. It's a fun time. So yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I'll probably have tons of more to say in the future. I mean, maybe I'll talk about it on stream and stuff. Go check out my Twitch. I'll leave a link down in the description. I might be doing more Arkham playthroughs and stuff like that, but we play other stuff like Lethal Company, Minecraft, and much more. So the traversal was fun, though. Fuck off, dude. Fuck off, dude. No. No. No.